Hey everyone, this is Josh from Solopreneur Grind for episode 75 of the Solopreneur Grind podcast. I'm happy to be joined by Gavin Preston. He's a business strategist, growth mentor, and new author. So Gavin, this is perfect timing. Thanks very much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Josh, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So Gavin, really interested to get deep into this. Can you tell us though, to begin with, little quick intro on Gavin Preston, and then what I want to do is dive into the storybook behind it.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a business strategist. I help businesses typically between 1 and 5 million in terms of revenue to scale and to grow. And I'm normally brought in one of two distinct scenarios. Either the business has had growth and then is now experiencing a plateau and hasn't found a way to break out of that plateau back into growth again. And I help them with that specifically. And also businesses that have got some challenges. They want to turn around. They want to get out of survival so that they can go on to thrive in business. And then I'm usually helping those businesses embark or continue the journey towards an exit, an exit, a worthy exit, if that is what they're looking for, or to build the capability in their teams so that they can step back and engage in other projects.
Got it. Very cool. So Gavin, I want to get up to that point throughout the show, but what I'm always interested in is what was kind of the first soiree into business and entrepreneurship for you?
Yeah, so I had a qualification and training with KPMG. So, one of the big four global accountancy firms that gave me right from a young age, incredible training and real experience in lots of different businesses. Typically with the nature of the training contracts that you do with firms like that, you're regularly every week really in different businesses. So you get to see a lot right from the early stages of your career. And, not dissimilar to, the legal training that you'll have had, Josh, is that you're taught to think in a particular way. You're taught to learn and to be constantly embrace training and learning. And so whilst the traditional accounting development was taking place, I had a parallel track, and that parallel track was a growing passion and interest in personal development, in the world of NLP and of coaching. And it started from the age of 15 when my dad handed me a book by W. Clement Stone called The Success System That Never Fails. And W. Clement Stone was mates with Napoleon Hill of Think and Grow Rich fame. And in W. Clement Stone book, my dad opened to a page of the famous Napoleon Hill quote, "What the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve." And my dad handed me the book, opened at this quote, and he said, and I was doing exams in the UK, school exams at about the age of 16. They're known as GCSE exams. And I was studying for those GCSE exams. And my dad said to me, "Say to yourself, what the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve 50 times a day and think about getting 9 A's at GCSE. So I went, "Oh, sure, Dad. Okay." I didn't know any different. And I got my 9 A's and it just blew my mind. So book number 2, 15, 16 years of age was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And then I just voraciously consumed as much as I could. And we were talking tape programs then, but listened to as much of the tape programs. And then when I was doing my university dissertation for my undergrad, I studied the common traits of successful entrepreneurs. And I came across a book called Awaken the Giant Within, Tony Robbins' famous book, and then, of course, Unlimited Power.
They're sitting behind me right there, yeah.
Yeah. So I got hooked. And so whilst on the one hand, I was learning everything I could about the art, the craft, the science of behavioral change and coaching, got heavily into NLP, working with Richard Bandler, Paul McKenna, and their UK business partner at the time, Michael Breen, and the business applications of NLP in large, how you could use that with teams or individuals. And then there was this piece with KPMG around consulting, around finance, around commercials. And those two ran in parallel until my kind of second position. I was headhunted after my time at KPMG. And after a couple of finance roles in BAE Systems, I joined their corporate university. And I was able to start to really go deep around the skills of behavioral change, around coaching, around facilitating senior management teams and doing consultancy pieces for them.
Got it. So when you were at KPMG, like did you kind of always plan to continue down this corporate route, and when you did make that move, were you looking for other jobs, or were you kind of happy moving along? Interested to know what brought about some of those career progressions.
So what became evident to me through my training is that I wasn't necessarily the most technically brilliant tax advisor or to do the detailed accounts. But what I was good at was the bigger picture stuff around strategy, and to be able to sit with a client or with clients and draw from my bits of knowledge from all the different disciplines that we're trained in, and to be able to provide some advice. So I think I was built more in terms of my own flair to go down a consultancy path as opposed to, a practicing accountant path. So I was looking for a route, and the route into be a route to pursue that consultancy path. And my hope was I would find a way of kind of starting to shuffle sideways in consultancy towards to do some of the more organizational development stuff and leadership and coaching space as well.
Right. Very interesting. I've actually been thinking a lot lately, Gavin, about I don't want to say bridge, but I guess the separator between more of the consultancy professional services and then the business operator, having business ideas, growing your own business type thing. And not to say that there's a whole bunch of overlap, or that one could do both, or that one could transition from one to the other. But do you have any thoughts on those who are maybe earlier on in their career, they like business, maybe they do or don't have a business idea, but they're not sure, like, oh, should I go start my own business or work in a business, or maybe go down that consulting path? Any thoughts on that?
I think having relevant experience and a network, good contacts that can help you get going, I think is incredibly important. So if you have the opportunity to go and work with another consultancy as an employee, or as a freelance resource, consulting or coaching resource for a bigger consultancy, that gets you going and gets you started. I think a lot of people start on the kind of solopreneur coaching consultancy space, and they can find it quite hard to win revenue, get work, and also build that CV up of stellar clients to be working for. So if you can go and be a freelancer for another consultancy or coaching organization that wants good quality resource, but particularly at the moment, they might not want to carry the fixed overhead of an employee on their books, but they'll be happy for someone to work freelance, then that can give you some income to get you started. It puts names on your CV in terms of client companies, and gives you really valuable experience and helps you build a network. And that was, for me, was I when I first started off my own business in 2002 doing the coaching consultancy piece. I had a launch client of a big insurance and reinsurance company called Aon, but also in parallel to that, I was a freelance coaching resource for a coaching practice in London.
Very cool. Can we talk to the maybe year or two leading up to that point? So we'll say, like right around the year 2000, where were you at that point? And then what were some of the steps that you took to kind of transition to that next phase, we'll call it?
Sure. So I was in the corporate university of BAE Systems, working in their head office in Farnborough in Hampshire in the UK. And what I was doing was introducing a high performance coaching capability to the top 650 directors of BAE Systems. So I guess I was commissioning a team of people, an external training company, to come in and design, pilot, and then run a coaching training program. And I brought in Michael Breen, who was the guy that was the master trainer in NLP that taught me an awful lot. I'd spent about 3 years being his apprentice, and it started off actually while I still was at BAE Systems, with BAE Systems paying for me to do some of the training courses. I brought him and his team in and helped them design and tested a pilot program, and then we rolled it out, and it was a very successful program. And that gave me a really caliber training, but it also gave me huge experience and an opportunity to coach alongside, or to work alongside his team that he brought in, which was great experience. As a result of that, and having gone through his public programs, NLP business practitioner, master practitioner, I then started to be an assistant on those programs. So I just started to give them my time for free to help out on those programs. And they had in their attendee base, like buyers in the surfaces of coaching and learning and development from big corporates. So the launch client Aon that I talked about just a few minutes ago, I met the lady who was head of learning and development for Aon because I was working with her while she was an attendee on the Business Master Practitioner program. And that gave me an opportunity to demonstrate my capability. And I think if there's one thing I've consistently found that was worked for me growing my business has been to demonstrate to people how the work I can do and the impacts of my work, whether that be helping out somebody else's training course in the early days, through to speaking events, through to podcasting, through to giving somebody a complimentary session and adding value and seeing where that leads.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best ways to prove that you can help someone is to actually help them first, and
Yeah.
it makes the rest much easier. So, Gavin, at what point did you decide, okay, I've had enough kind of working for other people. I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to do my own thing. And then, I mean, this is one of my favorite topics, especially because there's, not as many other podcasts do as much digging into that. Let's call it the first 6 to 12 months, right? So you finally pull the trigger. You put yourself in a good position, right? You've got all this training. It sounds like what you did really well too is you leveraged the resources at your previous company, and you were basically being paid to learn and train and network, which is awesome. But then you pull the trigger. What do those first 6 months look like on your own, and what do you think you would attribute to the success that you've been able to have?
Yeah, I think just one part of the jigsaw, I think, which is significant, is the team I was initially working with in this corporate university. We got on fantastic. We were a great team. My boss was great. His boss was fantastic, who ran the department. And then there was a change implemented at the top, and it came down, and my sort of head of department, he was moved on, and we were seen as kind of tarred with the outgoing guard. And all of a sudden, the environment within which I was working went from being part of a great team where we were doing brilliant work and having fun, to quite a toxic environment. So it was becoming very clear that my face no longer fitted. Neither did those of my peer group around me, and I negotiated a departure really at that moment. So that kind of came about relatively quickly. I'd like to say I had a lead time or a runway of 6 months knowing that this was going to happen. No, it was kind of like weeks. It was probably 4 to 6 weeks that it escalated. And then I find myself in a situation, do I try and go and get some jobs for a consultancy? But my CV said, hey, chartered accountant, KPMG qualified chartered accountant. Oh, yes, you've done an 18 months secondment doing some leadership development stuff and some learning and development stuff. So that became quite a tough pitch. And at the same time, there was interest from Aon, and I secured that work. So that kind of pushed me down the solopreneur pathway. So that's how it all started, and I had the launch client. The first 6 months were, I think, equally fulfilling and exciting. The work on Aon with the coaching program was phenomenal, but also kind of lonely, because I had been in this big corporate infrastructure, whether it had been in a fast-paced international firm like KPMG, or one of the largest defense manufacturers in BAE Systems, and all of a sudden there was just me sat in a room on my own. And I look back now, and I think I should have spent more time building networks and going out there and demonstrating and offering of my services, instead of making sure the business card was right and making sure the website was right and getting the brand and all the nice easy stuff, when actually you need to be getting out there and hustling and building relationships and getting some work in. So but within that 6 months, I then started to use those networks and get some work in, as I say, via a coaching practice in London, and become a freelance resource for them as well, which really helped.
Got it. Very cool. And so what would you recommend, maybe 2 or 3 pieces of advice? I mean, coaching has become very popular, right? Especially in the last few years. And I mean, you could have a whole podcast episode on that kind of industry as it's come to be. Sure. In the last few years specifically. For those who are considering going into coaching, whether it be business strategy, growth, or something unrelated, what would you recommend that people do, maybe even before they start, to kind of consider whether it's the right path to go down for them?
Yeah, for a start, I would look at receive some coaching yourself. Be on the receiving end of it, because does you'll see how someone does it. You know, there are different styles. A really good pure executive coach is very takes the Socratic method, so asks questions and pulls that gets the coachee, the client, to think through the answers. But you then so it's very non-directive, whereas moving down the scale towards mentoring can be more directive, where somebody that's been seasoned and experienced and got a few grey hairs, who's been there and done that, would say, oh, for the benefit of my experience, this is what I suggest you do. And there's a myriad of styles in between those two extremes. So I think my first advice is go and experience it. Do you like it? Could you see yourself being able to do that? Are you a problem solver? Are you able to think through problems rationally? Are you able to come up with really good questions to get somebody to think about it differently? If you struggle, which I see a lot of people do when they like the idea of coaching, they struggle to keep their own mouth shut, and they just want to tell somebody what to do. And it works the best when the person you're working with, yes, they're open to ideas, but they need to have the aha moments, the realizations themselves. And that happens when the coach asks really good questions and then shuts up.
Yeah, no, I totally relate. I had a business coach a few years back when I got started, and even just hearing you say that, I had a bunch of aha moments in my own head as I was answering his questions. And it was like, wow, this guy knows what he's doing, you know? And like you said, having never experienced being coached has got to be pretty important, because like anything else, in the world that you might want to go into, without having seen it in practice, a lot of people might say it's a bit of a stretch to just dedicate everything to it.
If you can't, in my opinion, if you can't be coached because you're not open to someone challenging you, you're not open to trying out new ideas or looking at a situation or a problem from a different perspective, I think if you're not coachable, I don't think that makes you a very good coach, because it's
Right.
that openness, that mindset, that curiosity, your willingness to explore and try other things on that are essential that you need to bring as a coach to the coaching conversation or the coaching relationship.
Absolutely. And it would be a little counterintuitive to pitch yourself as a coach if you yourself don't believe in the act of receiving coaching from others. So,
It's a common question that somebody who is a prospective customer, I'm having a prospective client, I'm having a conversation with them and saying, so who's your coach? Do you get coaching yourself? And if you say no, then it's not congruous. People say, well, hold on, you're telling me I need a coach or I would benefit from a coach, but you don't have one.
yeah.
So I think there's a congruency about having your own coach and demonstrating that, well, you're role modeling the process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great, that makes a lot of sense, Gavin. So you end up you're working with your first big client, Aon. You're also doing some freelancing on the side. Take me through what happens next. Is there kind of a slow evolution of the company, and kind of tying that into where you're at now?
Yeah, so there was a slower evolution. I spent a lot of time working alongside Michael Breen on his courses, so I got exposed to other sort of students then I had the opportunity to work with and became clients. But then as I started to build out those interests, I managed to land a piece of work with the United Nations. I think it was back
Oh,
in
wow.
2006. So I went to the Near East, so places like Lebanon and the West Bank of so Lebanon and the West Banks. I went to Syria, Beirut. It was phenomenal. Obviously, places where you wouldn't go now, but I was being sort of taken around by the UN doing training in their United Nations Relief and Works Agency. So they were part of the UN that were working with Palestinian refugees, and it was just fascinating. So I did a period. I think I did about 4 or 5 weeks out there training around interview skills.
Very cool. And so, how does that period in time take us to where you're at now. What's the focus right now? And
Yeah, so I think one big, to use that word we've used a couple of times, a bridge was I did a lot of work within international bank, but with the international bank called HSBC, which is big in the UK and I know has some presence, but not necessarily as big in the US. And HSBC did a lot of work internally with them, coaching from a very senior level, and that piece of work was got initially via was through me being a consultant, a freelance consultant for this consultancy that had secured the work within HSBC, needed more resource to deliver it, needed someone who had already worked within HSBC Bank, and I had via that other coaching organisation in London I made reference to. So that gave me an in, and having worked for 3 or 4 years delivering training around strategy and coaching at a very senior level down to relationship managers who are face to face with customers in the business and commercial sectors. After a period, there became an opportunity about sort of 12 or 18 months after I stopped doing that piece of work, when they said, hey, would you like to come and do a day's worth of run a workshop for our customers? We can't pay you, but it's a bit of business development for you. Hey, would you run a day for our customers and around business growth? They had, yeah, great, I'd love to do that. And that went well, and it turned into a 2-year speaking tour, UK national tour. So we did 84 dates over 2 years.
wow.
Up and down the UK, and they put anywhere between 30 and 275 people in the room. And Josh, that was an awesome platform. That was a massive step, step up. And off the back of that, there were business owners that were pretty much in this anywhere between 250,000 turnover and 20 million turnover in the room. And I found myself attracting and then doing work with people in that kind of 1 to 5 million turnover space. And I ran a program called Double Your Business, and I wanted, there's a lot of people, especially in the coaching industry, that there's a lot of hot air and isn't necessarily the substance. And I wanted to come across with come up with a promise or an offer that was pretty ballsy, to be honest, but also quite courageous, that would challenge me and put me on the spot. So I made an offer to the audience. I did a test offer, and I said, hey, who here is interested in growing the business? Yes, hands went up. Who wants to double your business? Do you think it's theoretically possible to double your revenue in a year? Yeah. Okay, so work with me for a year, and if you don't double your business, you money back.
Wow.
And that was my promise. And provided you do everything that we agreed collectively and implement everything, because implementation equals income, and if they don't implement, then you can't be held responsible for them not getting the results. But and of the people that went through 4 cohorts of that, more than a third of those business owners more than doubled. And those were the ones that implemented. The ones that didn't more than double, they might have got more modest rise of 20% growth in a year, which was still incredibly impressive, but they hadn't implemented everything that we agreed that they would implement. So, yeah, that was a phenomenal success story, and the HSBC customers were going, wow, it's the best single day that the bank has ever put on in terms of development, and really loved that. And that kind of joint venture marketing type model, where it was just a win for HSBC customers. It was a win for HSBC because their customers thought they were brilliant putting that event on, and then it was a win for me in terms of lead generation. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. The 2 things that I'd love to ask a little bit deeper on. Number one is, it's a great opportunity that I would imagine some people might skip over, right? You get reached out by something like a big company like HSB, and they say, will you do this? We can't pay you. And so would love to hear what your thoughts are on that topic. Obviously what you did was you took up the opportunity either way, because the upside was far greater than maybe them paying you a couple hundred or a couple $1,000 to do that 1-day event. You've more than made all that back. So I'd love to hear what you kind of think about that and the opportunities. And then secondly, what was it that kind of motivated you to come up with that offer, right? Because if you were going on these, giving all these presentations and generating enough leads, why did you decide to go a little bit further and say, hey, here's my double your business offer, and why not just kind of stick to whatever you had been doing until then?
Yeah, so to take the first question, the The point around demonstration, wanting to lead with value. I did a great training program myself as a company called Dent Global that run a program called Key Person of Influence. There's an author, Daniel Priestley, behind it. He's a great guy, great book, Key Person of Influence. And he says that if you want to grow your sphere of influence and become the person that people seek out rather than just another number in a busy marketplace, then you need to you need to work on 5Ps: your pitch, you need to be able to publish, write a book, then you need to be able to build a suite of products, then you need to be able to increase your profile and then develop partnerships. And so with this education and having done, or in the process of doing this course at the time, because it's about a 9-month course with a number of modules, whilst doing that, the HSBC opportunity came to me when they said, "Oh, hey, could you just do this one day? I can't pay you, but hey, it's business development for you." I just thought, wow, this could actually be one of those Ps. This could be the partnership opportunity. So, and I knew that if HSBC said to a customer, "Hey, come along and see this guy. He's going to do a one day around strategies for growth," if the customer is going to think, "Well, he must be all right then if HSBC are putting him in front of me." Mm-hmm. So the implied trust in that relationship between the bank and the customer was sort of passed over to me, or is extended over to me, and that relationship with me. So it gave me a huge amount of credibility. And then to your second question about the offer and what made me think I wanted to do it, all the more ballsy, I suppose. And it was actually a road trip I did with my brother. My brother used to work out in Dubai, and he finished his contract out in Dubai, and he decided to drive back to London. So he got on a ferry and he went through Iran and Turkey and all the way back through Europe. And I joined him for the last 48-hour sprint from Nice in the south of France back to London. And it was like going down those sort of roads in France. And he's always had a really, I think, skeptical awareness around the work that I did, because he wasn't necessarily into personal development, nor still to this day. But we started to talk about, and he was asking me some engaging and challenging questions. So he's effectively coaching me. And he said, "Well, so what is it that you really help people do?" I said, "Well, I can help them really grow." He says, "Well, by how much? How much could you help somebody grow in a year? 20%? 25%? And I remember sitting there in the passenger seat as the miles were flying by, and I just, because his next question was, if you were to say you could do something, I used the word ballsy, what would it be? And I went, I could double a business in a year. And it was just came to me from my gut in that moment. And he went, go on, could you? Could you really? Goading me, really. And I went, I just had this sense of certainty, this congruency, this gut feel. I went, yeah, I can do that. But then I also liked, from my point of view, the authenticity of standing in front of people, standing strong in an audience when I'm doing this event this day, and I'm standing strong and saying, we can do this. I believe in you. You believe in me, and I'm going to back it with a rock solid money back guarantee. And guarantees like that 100% money back guarantee is one very effective way of removing any objections in the sales process, the sales conversation. And people will just look at me and go, wow, that guy's confident. He knows, and as long as you're not arrogant with it, confidence sells.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, super interesting. And so did you notice a big difference, whether it be number of clients or how you were attacking your work and working with your clients once you started implementing that program?
Yeah. So there was a combination of group work with the people in the cohort, and then one-on-one strategic planning and coaching. And interestingly, it was the very same model that I had joined and seen work so well in Aon right at the beginning of my coaching career. So I was given 6 people inside Aon to coach who were high potentials, senior execs of the future. And I had to coach them all in a group of 6 in a group coaching format, or action learning set as they were called, or we would call it a masterminding in modern parlance. And then I would coach each of those 6 people individually as well. And I found this combination of group work with them and individual work with them works so well, because they were a part of a community on a journey together. So there was that was the support, there was challenge from each other, there was camaraderie, and that worked. And then they had the individual sessions with me as well. So I took the same model into my W Business program. So we did group masterminds on a monthly basis, and a combination of me sharing new content, and we were helping each other out with their businesses. And it created a fabulous bond, friendship, and business relationships that are still present to this day. And then I would do strategic planning sessions with them in their business, build out their 6-month, 12-month plan for the growth of their business, and then have regular accountability and coaching calls, on a monthly basis with them. So they started to get some really good results, phenomenal results. And the bit that also really demonstrated to me was the thing that changed the trajectory and the growth of their business was mindset. And because most business owners plateau at a level of their own thinking. So if they only think they're a small local business and they get habituated to operate at that level, unless they can shift their thinking and they can think, hey, we're a statewide business, or we're a national business, or we're, with the power of the internet, we're a global business with, digital products, etc. Unless you start to think bigger, then you're never going to get your business to go any bigger. So when I shine the spotlight of brilliance on the clients I was working with and saying, you can do this, it's like taking the cataracts off their eyes and saying, hey, look, this is what the view, this is the art of the possible. This is where we could really take your business. And when you bestow so much belief and certainty on somebody and show them the way in terms of a strategy, they overcome their or they are at least able to suspend their disbelief in it, whether they can do it or not, whether they're good enough or not, whether it's possible or not, and they start working the plan. And with the coaching, they start to get great results, and they go, whoa. And then that's just like fuel on the fire then.
Right. Absolutely. And that's really great to hear. So Gavin, let's get a little bit more into what you find yourself, talking about with clients. And so one of them clearly is, just kind of shifting their mindset so that they can even believe that they can accomplish what you're about to help them accomplish. Can you talk about maybe 2 or 3 other very common, whether it be topics or suggestions or struggles that a lot of your clients have maybe early on?
Yeah, sure. So I have a business growth model that I call the strategy compass. And there are 6 stages to this. And whilst when I run them through in a second, you'll note that none of these are new. What it does do is, in a comprehensive way, is bring things together. So, for example, you get books on strategy, but you don't, and you get books on mindset, but you don't necessarily get the books in, strategy and mindset in the same book. Mm-hmm. And so this model, stage 1, strategy compass, stage 1 is purpose, as popularized by Simon Sinek's work. Start with why, brilliant work. Purpose. What's the North Star for your business? What's the difference you're making to your customers and your customers' customers? Step 2 is mindset, which we've just touched on, how important that is if you're going to change the trajectory of the growth of a business. Step 3 is outcome. It's having clarity about where you're heading. And that might sound a statement to the obvious, but when I did that 84 gig speaking tool for HSBC, I asked every audience, how many here have you got written down goals for the next 1, 2, 3 years? And I was shocked, no matter where we were in the UK, less than 20% of the people in the room had written down goals. So outcome being step 3, being critical clear. Once we know where we want to go, the very next question we ask ourselves is how? Well, that's strategy. That's step 4. Step 5 is about building the capability in your business so you can scale and grow. And step 6 is action and accountability. So to answer your question, what kind of conversations do I have? I have been having a lot of conversations with the strategy piece. How they're going to stand out in a noisy market, how they're going to be differentiated. And then I have a lot of conversations around how do we grow the capability of the people, the team, the systems, the working capital, the cash in the business, so that we can put a greater transactional volume through that business.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense, especially that framework. So do you hear a couple of the, are there like 2 or 3 biggest struggles or problems that you tend to see, whether it be entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives coming to you with, that have kind of surfaced, kind of created a theme over the last few years?
Yeah, cash and people. Um, so growth is hungry on cash.
Mm-hmm.
Growth is demanding on people and on systems and on any kind of like machinery or assets you have in your business. And most people underestimate the working capital provision, having adequate cash funding in the business so it can scale and grow. So, yeah, cash gets caught up with customers, with accounts receivable. It kind of gets caught up in raw material stock, finished goods stock, gets and so before you know it, you're running tight on cash, and particularly if you have what's known as a negative cash flow cycle, where you pay out for raw materials, for labor before you get paid in from your customer, then that can cause a real challenge around cash flow. So that's one area. So I help people forecast and plan out the cash and share with them a number of different strategies they can do to kind of smooth out the cash flow so that the ins and the outs works well. Um, because when you're short of cash, then that puts a lot of people in terms of business in a state of fear, and they can't think in that. If you're really petrified about how you're going to meet payroll at the end of the week, then you're not in a great place to come up with a creative, solutions to a complex problem. So I get them out of that fear, and I give them do this, 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 and this. It takes them out of that rabbit in the headlights moment. We do those things and they move on. The next thing, which is always super hard, is that entrepreneurs want to push hard, to get excited, they want to move things, they want to move fast, they've got great vision and ambition, and it's harder to bring a team with you. And sometimes culture is set from the top, and if all of a sudden you're putting the foot on the gas and you're increasing the speed of the business, you can get members of the team equal and opposite trying to put the foot on the brake. And it's how do you engage with them? How do you excite them? How do you compel them to come on a journey with you? And purpose is one aspect of that for sure. But that bit about the engagement and the motivation and creating the pull so that people want to follow you on a journey. I think leadership is about creating followership, and it's helping them to create the pull so people want to come with you on the journey rather than the push where people are going to push back.
Absolutely. Makes a ton of sense. Awesome, Gavin. I just want to ask you one more question, and then of course I do want to ask a little bit about the book as well. But given how much some growth strategies these days can rely on social media, digital marketing, things like that, how has your approach to growth changed in the last few years? And do you have a few suggestions that you find yourself giving to most business owners as it relates to we'll call it, modern day growth guidance?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, how has my approach to growth changed over the last few years? I have an entrepreneurial flair. I get excited about growth. I get excited by the challenge that's contained within that. But I think over the last few years, I've developed a little bit more wisdom or awareness when it makes sense to just ease your foot off the gas a little bit and make sure that you've either got enough cash reserves or your systems and processes are right. So growth for growth's sake isn't the answer. You want a profitable business that's going to sustain over time. And you want a happy team. So, just driving flat out for growth all of the time isn't the answer. I think so that greater roundedness and awareness through experience of there are times actually when you take your foot off the gas a bit while you build out the capability of the business is one thing that I've changed. Back to the point around kind of marketing and digital marketing, etc. I'm a massive fan about how we can engage, across nation borders and around the world. For me, the answer to that is putting out really good value-adding content to help people. So I'm less about beating my own chest. I'm more about, hey, let me share this with you. Hey, this might help you. I'm a podcaster like yourself, and so putting together good quality content and helping people. Back to that point around demonstration is what I find works most effectively from a social media point of view.
Absolutely, and totally agree. Awesome, Gavin. Well, this has been really great learning more about the story and getting some of these guidelines and suggestions. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book? Kind of what motivated you to write it? And if you can give us, the synopsis, then we'd love to hear
Sure.
more about
So,
it.
so, so the book's called Survive and Thrive. Survive and Thrive: How to Secure, Scale, and Succeed in Business. It's kind of like hot off the press. It was launched on the 30th of July, so that's really cool.
Oh, wow.
And and the Thrive Part Two of the book is based around that six-step model, the strategy compass, and that's the model that I've used and proven with these businesses that have helped double and more in a year. But I also recognize that not everybody's in that space of A, thriving, or B, believing thriving is possible. Some are quite literally struggling to keep their business afloat, struggling to keep the boat afloat. So I changed the nature and focus of the book. It was just going to be about the growth and about the thrive, and I put a new front end on it, the survive piece, because there's people out there hurting, and they're hurting right now. And you
Mm-hmm.
actually need, there's the phrase, to finish first you have to finish. Well, to thrive in business, particularly at times like now, first you have to survive. And so the strategies in the surviving part one of the book, which is all about how do we keep your boat afloat in terms of cash? What are the things that we can do to bring more sales and revenue in right now? How do we save costs? And literally ideas and suggestions and bullet points of things that you could be doing right now to help your business weather the storm. I'm a sailor, so I
Right.
use quite a lot of nautical analogies you will have picked up. But yeah, to help you weather the storm. And I think that's so pertinent right now that there is a lot of business owners, whether they have a team, a larger business, or whether they're solopreneurs, they're either hurting or they're really worried. And I think at the moment, it'd be so easy to get into paralysis and fear around what's going on in the world, the economy, etc., and what that looks like over the next few months, stroke years. And yet, in every period of uncertainty, there's always opportunity. And what I'm hoping with the book is to bring a mixture, a blend of inspiring you with the mindset and strategies and shining the spotlight of belief and spotlight of brilliance on your capability, but then backing it up with the foundations of here's the solid business principles that you need to put in practice right now in order for your business to survive and then go on to thrive. And now more than ever, the messages in the book are absolutely pertinent and really needed.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is August 2nd for anyone who is listening to this perhaps well into the future. So yeah, the effects of COVID are definitely being felt. Gavin, that's awesome. Where can people find the book? And if people want to learn more about you or follow you on social media,
Sure.
where do they
So
recommend you
yeah,
go?
so go to surviveandthrive.cc. So that's surviveandthrive.cc to find out about the book and the audiobook there and more about that. And if you want to follow me, you could check out my podcast. It's the Business Mastermind podcast, the Business Mastermind podcast. And also, connect with me on social media. So to get me on Facebook, it's just gavin.live. That'll link you straight through. Gavin.live will link you through on Facebook, and look for Gavin Preston on LinkedIn or Gavin_Preston on Instagram.
Awesome. Gavin, thanks very much. We're going to have links to all those in the description, whether you're watching or listening to this. Gavin, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Josh, thank you so much for having me.